world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Sunday, February 1st, and we've got a lot to talk about because there's always a lot to talk about. Now, Donald Trump came out and took to Truth Social, and he was talking about the Kennedy Center. Now, you may remember Donald Trump fired most of the board of the Kennedy Center, replaced them all with loyalists, and made himself the head of the board. And then they turned around and named the Kennedy Center after Donald Trump. And within a day of them holding that vote without congressional approval, he put his name on the side of the building. Now, what happened with that? Well, in response, a lot of acts and other things that were going to be going on at the Kennedy Center have canceled. They've been having horrendous ticket sales going forward. We were talking about that on the podcast the other day, and I think also on a TikTok, where they were trying to say the Kennedy Center had been losing money for years. Of course, trying to deflect away from the fact that it's all due to the changes led by this administration. So Donald Trump comes out on Truth Social and is talking about the Kennedy Center and says, well, okay, what we're going to do, and he didn't quite say it's because nobody's coming, but he did say that because there are fewer acts booking because they are canceling, and of course he's blaming the left for the acts canceling. That makes it easier. He is going to close the Kennedy Center for about 2 years, maybe slightly longer, according to him, as of July 4th of this year for a remodel. Now, he claims the remodel has already been paid for, but how? They were just trying to say the other day that the Kennedy Center was losing money. So where'd the money for a remodel come from? Did they get a big grant, a donation from somebody? No idea. Is it private donations? And again, where? Is it federal funds? Well, I haven't seen anything go through Congress. I haven't heard any member of Congress talking about funding a remodel. Or is this more bullshit from Donald Trump just trying to close it so people aren't talking about how he has wrecked the Kennedy Center? Wouldn't surprise me at all that he is just closing the Kennedy Center to get people away from talking about how all of these places and all of these acts and stuff are saying, yeah, we're not going to go there anymore. We don't want anything to do with it because until Donald Trump's name is off of the building. Now, what's going to happen if Donald Trump is gone? If there is an actual remodel, they would probably finish it. If this is all bullshit, I'm assuming J.D. Vance would quietly reopen the Kennedy Center, come out and say, well, we got it done quicker than we thought, and they may do some minor alterations to make it look like they attempted something, maybe some fresh paint and carpet or something, some new flooring, enough to make it look like they did something while it was closed, and then quietly reopen it and hope and take Donald Trump's name off and hope it goes back to normal. Now, if Donald Trump makes it all the way to July 4th, 2028, which is that 2-year mark, I fully expect that they're going to say, well, we ran into some snags. It's going to take longer. And he's probably going to try to leave the Kennedy Center closed the remainder of his presidency because this is a stain on his record. And he doesn't want to be connected to the fact that attendance is down, revenue is down, acts are canceling, people aren't be able to, you can now get tickets relatively easily when before it was harder to get tickets. Places, in certain events there were selling out in minutes. And now they have to almost give the tickets away. And Donald Trump doesn't want any of that embarrassment. So this is his latest strategy. Now, can we add the Kennedy Center to the list of things Donald Trump has bankrupted? Does this go the way of Trump casinos, Trump steaks, Trump vodka, Trump University, to name a few? Donald Trump does this kind of shit all the time. Now, the only thing that's different this time, from what I can tell, is there's no golden parachute here. He's not going to enrich himself by closing the Kennedy Center. And maybe that's why he's doing it too. It's entirely possible, knowing Donald Trump, that he thought when he put himself at the head of the board that he was going to find a way to grift some money out of it and make it profitable for himself. And that didn't quite work out. So maybe that's why he's closing it, between that and the negative press. He doesn't want to deal with that. So now they are saying the Kennedy Center will be closed for a 2-year remodel. I don't buy it. Okay. And Congress, if they are using federal money, Congress would have to be the one to approve that. And I don't think they've done that. Now, maybe there was something tucked away into a bill that we didn't see, because they like to do that. They like to do what's called an earmark, or a rider, sometimes they refer to it as well. Well, they pass this other bill that has nothing to do with what's going on, but they tack on funding for something else. And then it gets extra votes and they pass it, and it's all good. Now, they haven't done that nearly as much as they used to, because Congress is not nearly as bipartisan as it used to be. Congress used to be extremely bipartisan. They would turn around and they would pass things, uh, routinely, where it wasn't such a close vote. And now everything is passed on party lines. Everything is, uh, really, really tightly passed. And if you do get bipartisan support, it almost makes national news. It becomes a surprise and a shock to everybody. Oh my God, Republicans crossed the aisle and sided with Democrats. Democrats sided with Republicans. The world is coming to an end. That used to be the norm. But when they were doing that, though, there were some things that were negative. And one of the negatives a lot of times was they'd attack these writers, which sometimes was spending or sometimes it was other priorities. Um, hey, you know what? I want your vote for this bill. I'll attach this thing you're really supporting to it. Can I get your vote? Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Or vice versa. They'll say, hey, I really want to pass this bill. Can I count on your vote? And then they will turn around and say, okay, but when I bring this thing up later down the road, I need your vote for that. That's what they used to do. It doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. Um, so Donald Trump is talking about closing the Kennedy Center and closing it for 2 years. Now, this is just to get out of the negative press, and it's another spin and a deflection away from all of the negative stuff coming out about him. This is just his latest attempt to divert, distract away from what's going on. He's closing the Kennedy Center because it was giving him negative press, but on top of it, he's trying to get away from the talk of everything coming out in the Epstein files, and the economy being bad, and just you know thing after thing after thing after thing that is going wrong. So now he's throwing something else. Next week it'll be something else. The week after that it'll be something else. There's always going to be something that they are trying to divert from, to keep us from talking about uh, anything that is negative to Donald Trump, and this is his latest attempt. Now, with Donald Trump and his health, that's where I want to go next. I've seen some stuff talking about how bad off he is, and you don't have to just watch the guy, and you can tell that he is not in good shape. Right? Apparently, he has not golfed since January 11th. That is over almost 3 weeks ago that he hasn't gone golfing, and there's a lot of people speculating that he can no longer golf, and I'd believe it. If you watch how he has been the last several weeks, look at how he was in Davos. Now, he has had that lean going on for a while. He'd stand at a podium and he'd stand there and he would lean at the hips, and that's a sign of frontal lobe dementia, I believe. But you watch him walk and he's not able to walk in a straight line. And he's talked about having to take the stairs and be very gentle when he takes the stairs. And now he drags his foot, uh, or it appears that he drags his foot when he walks and stuff. I don't think his balance is good enough to golf anymore. And golfing is one of the things that Donald Trump loves the most. Well, that and cheating at golf. We've heard through varying books that were released by people close to Donald Trump that one of the things Donald would do is he would call into clubs where they were holding a tournament, and they would turn out and they would write him in for a score, and somehow he would win a tournament he wasn't even there to play at. which is ridiculous, but apparently he's done that numerous times. Um, but anyway, Donald Trump apparently hasn't been golfing. And if you look at his hands and the bruising, it is getting worse. Now, it was on his right hand, and they tried to explain it away as having been from rigorous handshaking, and now it is on his left. And you can't explain that away by rigorous handshaking. We've talked about that. What I think is going on is that they cannot get an IV going in his arm, so they have to use the back of his hand, which is common in older people. I know several people who that is the only place they can ever get IVs started is the back of the hand. But if you do it too often, you can blow out the blood vessels and stuff in the hand, and they start to bruise, especially when you're older, from having that happen. Well, now that it's on Donald Trump's left hand, they can't explain it away by vigorous handshaking. And I've seen some images where it looks like the bruising and there's bruising and redness and stuff on the palm as well. And I've seen some experts say that that is due to him taking potentially something beyond an aspirin. Now, he says he takes 325 milligrams of aspirin a day, 4 times the recommended dose of somebody who is on blood thinners or somebody who has at risk of having some kind of heart attack or something like that, that they would usually have you go on 81 milligrams. He's taking 325, or that's what he's claiming. And he calls it big aspirin. Well, I've seen other experts say, well, maybe he's not taking this. And that's kind of what I thought too, is that maybe he's not taking aspirin. Maybe he's taking something else, some other blood thinner or anti-clotting medication that they are worried that he could end up having a heart attack. But the only way they could get him to take it is if they tell him it is, aspirin. Because Donald Trump is, a narcissist. We've talked about it, how he is worried about what people think about him, etc. Now, he does not want to go ahead and say, I'm not healthy. I'm on blood thinners. That would make him like the rest of us. And in his mind, he's not. He's superhuman. He's godlike. So Donald Trump is saying that, he's on aspirin, and they're probably telling him that because that's the only way they could get him to take it daily. Don't forget, Mr. President, you got to take your aspirin. Now, his health isn't good. Now, he was at this cabinet meeting the other day in the Oval Office, and I can't verify that this actually happened, but they are right before it ended. It ended kind of abruptly, and Donald Trump did not take any questions. Now, I did not see the video where I could hear any audio that sounded like he crapped himself. But you watch the woman behind him, react, and even R.F. Kennedy Jr. is behind him, kind of looks over at him, and kind of looks down like, did that just happen? And then suddenly they were ending it real quick, and reporters were rushed out of the room. We know Donald Trump wears adult diapers, and he has for a long time. In fact, it was a known thing going into the 2024 election, at least for a while. You may remember some Donald Trump supporters were out at his events and stuff wearing diapers on the outside of their clothes, carrying signs and shirts that say "Real men wear diapers." There wasn't very many, but there was some that were doing it, and that just shows the hold he had over the cult. That even that wasn't enough for them to say, "Okay, wait a minute. Have we gone too far here with our support of Donald Trump?" But the bruising, the forgetfulness. Donald Trump doesn't know anything. Have you ever noticed that? And I'm going to talk about these special elections in Texas in a minute. But he was asked about these special elections in Texas, and one of the candidates he had personally endorsed lost. He said, "Oh, there was somebody running. I endorsed him. When was that? I don't know anything about that." Like, either he is purposely saying he doesn't know anything about this race because he doesn't want the embarrassment of having a candidate he endorsed yet again losing, or he straight doesn't remember and he is having dementia problems. You add that with the fact he can't walk a straight line. You watch him walking anywhere in a straight line. There's numerous videos now of him trying to walk, and if you walked the line when asked by a police officer to walk like that, they would get you on drunk in public. 110%. It is not even close. He looks like he is a staggering drunk at the rate he's going, and we know he doesn't drink, or at least that's what they say. There's other images of him dragging his foot where it looks like he cannot lift his one leg. Again, could be sign of dementia or stroke. I know people who have had strokes where it does affect your balance and your coordination, and depending on what part of the brain it affected. Normally, when you walk without even thinking about it, your body is designed to land heel first. And then you roll off to the ball of your foot and you push off. But when you've had a stroke and sometimes dementia or other things that affect the brain, your body cannot send that signal to your foot anymore to land heel first. So you're almost landing ball first. And it looks like you're not lifting your leg anymore, like you're dragging it along because you're not getting the lift of the front of your foot anymore. So that's all going on. You have the bruising, you have the forgetfulness, um, and you have the fact that he sundowns. Have you noticed that? He doesn't get up, and we don't hear from him from about 4 a.m. roughly to about 11 a.m. That's when they can finally get him to sleep. And he stays up all night. He talks about how he doesn't sleep at night. And then he's up all night posting on Truth Social because he's wired, and sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, but it's whatever he's currently thinking about. And some nights it's just him scrolling, oh, this look makes me look good, this, and he's just reposting because it keeps his brain active. Um, and then you notice about the time we get toward sundown, the events where he's at, there's not nearly as many, or he seems more confused. Um, it's that he only has very limited windows of clarity anymore, I think. And they are propping him up. 100%, I believe they are propping him up, trying to keep him going. Now, I've seen people refer to it as Weekend at Bernie's, where they are just trying to keep him going. And it's not quite Weekend at Bernie's because the guy was actually dead in Weekend at Bernie's, if I remember right. But still, they are propping him up. And this is far from whatever happened with Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden did have a stutter and he was slowing down, but he was nowhere near this bad. Now, Republicans and MAGAs are going to come out and say, oh, but what about Joe Biden? Joe Biden's health, Joe Biden's health. Well, Joe Biden's no longer currently the president. And I firmly believe that the next set of presidential funerals, it's going to go Donald Trump, then Joe Biden, and then probably Bill Clinton at some point after Joe Biden. Not saying right away, but at some point. Why? I don't think Donald Trump makes it to the end of this term. I do not believe his health holds out until January 20th, 2029. I don't think there's any way he makes it. And I think the Republicans are hoping that that is exactly what happens. I think that they are hoping that the Big Mac gets him because we know he eats McDonald's like every single day. And for those that do eat McDonald's every day, that's fine, if that's your diet. But when you're out of shape like Donald Trump, you are the president of the United States, you are almost 80 years old, and you have all of the other symptoms and health problems we've been talking about, it's probably not the best idea. Maybe you should consider eating a little healthier, especially when we hear. Now, I don't remember the exact combination of Donald Trump's favorite meal at McDonald's. I think it's a Big Mac, two filet of fish, and two large fries. I mean, that's a far cry from going getting your Big Mac meal with a fry and moving on. See, Donald Trump is not healthy. And I've seen some people who are experts in the medical field, and some are saying without having seen Donald Trump or that haven't treated him personally, but from the way he looks and the way he talks, they are saying that it is nearing the end. We are in the last gasps. And I think that's true. Some of these medical professionals are saying we may have 1 to 4 months, maybe six at the latest, uh, for Donald Trump to make it, and that might be close to accurate. Now, one of these days, he is not going to probably wake up. Um, as the saying goes, he's going to wake up dead. And when that happens, I think this administration, I don't think they hide it from us for very long. They wouldn't be able to. I think at most they hide it from us for about a day as they try to get a game plan. And this could be their off ramp without having to go against Donald Trump and to turn on him because of the files, because of the economy, because of ICE, because of anything else. And what I think is going to happen is when they decide to push JD Vance. Now, either way, whether they have to impeach and remove Donald Trump, 25th Amendment him because he's gotten bad enough, but he's still technically alive, or if he just doesn't wake up one morning, or maybe it happens in public and they can't deny it. When they decide to move on to JD Vance, I think the Republican Party is going to be giving, uh, JD Vance some marching orders, and his orders are going to be to fix this. Like they are going to tell him to go ahead and do whatever they can to, or whatever he can to fix the image of the Republican Party going into the midterms. And their image is shit right now. What I think he's going to do when he comes in is you're going to quietly see major changes. They're going to back off the immigration enforcement. You are going to see changes at his cabinet. You're probably going to see people like RFK Jr., Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, and a few others. Dr. Oz, probably Linda McMahon, basically most of the cabinet. One by one are going to resign, and he is going to put in his own people. And he's going to be able to get better people. Now, I know a lot of people are worried about JD becoming president. Here's the thing. A couple things are going to happen with JD Vance being president. One, like I said, I think he is going to be getting strict marching orders from the Republican Party. Now, JD Vance is not well liked within mainstream Republicans at all. And I think they are going to give him direction and say, okay, fix this. Okay, we need to get away from the ICE enforcement. That's bad press. We need to drop the tariffs. That's bad press. We need to work on fixing the economy. What do we need to do? And they are going to come up with a game plan. And they are going to tell him, fix it or else. And the or else will be, we will remove you. Now, I fully expect JD Vance to pick somebody relatively normal to be his VP. And what do I mean by relatively normal? Well, I would say a old school Republican, more of a Bush era conservative Republican, maybe somebody like oh, I'm drawing a blank. Just came to me, Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, or what's his name? The governor of New Jersey, former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, or maybe even Kristi Noem, not Kristi Noem. Oh, I can't think of it. She ran against him in 2020. 2024. She was trying to get the Republican nomination. It'll come to me. Anyway, that they're going to tell JD Vance to pick somebody relatively normal, and that person is going to get approved through Congress, in part with probably Democratic help. If it happens after the Democrats take control, like I think they will in the midterms. Um, But the big thing here is they're going to pick somebody normal, and that the Republicans are going to tell J.D. Vance to work on fixing everything. If it's before the midterms when Donald Trump is gone, they're going to try to fix their image as best they can so they don't get blown out in the midterms. And I think the midterms could be um, a 40 to 50 seat flip for Democrats, and that they could even have a chance in the Senate. Now, why? Well, earlier I mentioned this special election in Texas. Okay, there was a special election on a Saturday. It was yesterday. And there was two Democrats running for a House of Representatives seat. Well, there was like 13 people back in November on the ballot, but nobody got over the 50% threshold, so they had to do a runoff. And what happens now is this runoff was two Democrats running for a seat that had been, I believe, a Republican seat. So guaranteed Democratic win. Okay. And I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he won the seat, and that is going to change the House math uh, in the House of Representatives. And I'll get to that in a minute. But there was also a state seat election, and it was either for the House of Representatives or the Texas Senate. I think it was the Texas House of Representatives. And this was a district that Donald Trump won by 17 points. And the Democrat flipped the seat. And that is a bad sign for the Republicans in the midterms. That's why I think they are worried and they are going to give Donald Trump or the heave ho, and they are going to give J.D. Vance that kind of a walking order, that marching order of fix it, make things better for us so we don't get blown out. Now, as far as the House of Representatives math goes, this brings the House of Representatives, I believe, up to 200 and I think it's 14 Democrats to 218 Republicans. Now, there are 3 seats still vacant. There is a seat for uh, the open seat in New Jersey that was held by a Democrat who ended up becoming New Jersey's governor, and that was Mickey Sherrill. And that is a Democratic seat. That should be a safe pickup. That brings the Democrats to 215. Then there's a special election in Georgia. This is for the seat that was held by uh, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat is in a very red area. Probably going to be a Republican pickup, but on the off chance it's not, that would bring the Democrats to 216. Republicans are at basically, they have just enough votes right now at 218. If they all vote in favor of anything, it can pass. One no vote can sink a piece of legislation, maybe two, but one for sure will, for anything that needs a full majority of the whole House, regardless of vacant seats. They don't. If they lose one vote, they don't have it. If they vote to vacate Mike Johnson, for example, they wouldn't necessarily have the 218 votes required to pick a speaker. They may not never come to a speaker at that point. Now, why would they vacate Mike Johnson? Oh, any number of reasons. But simple fact of the matter is that's how close their majorities are. Democrats could be sitting at 216. That's a 2-seat flip. That's all they need to flip the House of Representatives, assuming everybody wins their reelection. And being an incumbent does help your reelection chances almost every time. Now, when it comes to the House of Representatives, there could be other people who end up either passing away. We've already seen several members of the House pass away this year, this term. So a couple Republicans pass away, Democrats flip those seats. They may get control of the House before the midterms, and that would be the end for Donald Trump. If the Democrats, in any shape or form between now or if they have to wait till the midterms and they take over in January, get control of the House of Representatives, then they end up you know, being able to stop everything Donald Trump is doing. And Donald Trump is terrified of that. So he's going to be out campaigning even more. But he was campaigning for this person in the Republican in Texas, had endorsed them. And now he took to True Social after this devastating loss, and he came out with a whole list of more endorsements. Donald Trump's endorsement isn't a guarantee anymore. It's almost a kiss of death. It's almost a guarantee that they lose those elections. I'm not going to get into everybody who he endorsed, but still, the fact that he's come out with so many endorsements doesn't help. And we are getting into primary season. We are just over a month away from the first starts of those primaries, where we start figuring out who is running for which seats and everything else that they have. Um, you know, to figure out, okay, is it going to be, for example, and this is for both parties, and I'm going to use the Democrats here. Is it going to be the establishment Democrat whose name I can never think of in Maine versus Plattner? Is it going to be Plattner, or is it going to be the establishment older Democrat? It's probably going to be Plattner going up against Susan Collins. Well, depending on who it is, if it is Plattner, there's a good chance Democrats can flip that seat, and it becomes a democratically held seat instead of an independent that caucuses with the Republicans. And down the line, the primaries are very important. And that's where we're at right now. We are at the primary stage. We're getting very, very close anyway. Less than a month, or just over a month, rather. And Donald Trump is going to be out. He's going to be pushing. He's going to be campaigning. That's going to add stress to an already stressed body. Now, he's not going to the Super Bowl next Sunday. He went last year. He's not going this year. He said it's too far because it's in California. Does that mean he can't handle a cross-country plane ride anymore? Probably not. I mean, I think he's still able to do that. I think it's just an excuse for him to not go because he doesn't want to get booed. He doesn't want to get embarrassed. But, it's just something we're watching with his health and everything else going on. When he says he's not going to certain events that he had attended in the past, it makes us wonder, how bad off is he? Now, I talked earlier about J.D. Vance becoming president. I want to go back to that for a little bit. If J.D. Vance does become president ahead of Donald Trump's end of term, which the end of the term for Donald Trump is set at January 20th, 2029. Now, Donald Trump has talked about running for another term, and he can't. He is not eligible. But he keeps floating it out there because he knows the minute he quits talking about running and he actually endorses somebody and they start looking toward who that next person is, the attention starts to go away. He becomes a lame duck. He doesn't want the attention to stop. He loves the attention from being the sitting president. This is trademark Donald Trump. So he's going to hold this idea of, well, who's going to be the president over everybody's head? Because he doesn't want them to stop talking about him at all. He wants to have control over who they pick, who they get, who's going to be running. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be one of his sons? Is it going to be J.D. Vance? Is it going to be Rubio? He wants to keep himself relevant to that whole discussion for as long as he possibly can. Now, when it comes to everything, Donald Trump will be gone if he doesn't make it like we're talking about. And J.D. Vance takes over. We were talking about who J.D. Vance could pick and as a VP. Now, he could pick Brian Kemp. He could pick Chris Christie. He could pick the person I was thinking of, Nikki Haley. A bunch of there's several Republicans he could pick that I would view as normal. I mean, hell, he may dig out a dinosaur and go with Jeb Bush. I think Jeb Bush is still alive. And try to bring some credibility back to the Republican Party. Now, that person would end up getting through House confirmation and the Senate confirmation. Both chambers have to agree to approve whoever it is. Now, this process has only ever been used, I believe, once actually, and that was after um, uh, Spiro Agnew, the president for Nixon, had to resign in disgrace. And then Gerald Ford was appointed. Well, if Vance steps up, he would get to pick his own VP. And I'm going to repeat this because this comes up all the time. Everybody is worried about Mike Johnson becoming the VP. That's not going to happen unless that happens to be who JD Vance picks. JD Vance will get to pick his own person. Okay. Now, when that's all said and done, they're going to move forward and they are going to be, their unit and stuff. We will see if that ends up even coming to pass. If that ends up being, but I think that's going to be necessary, and I think we are going to end up having a president die in office. We've been talking about it. I think it's going to be Donald Trump, and we are going to have to be dealing with this reality of JD Vance. Now, a lot of people are worried about JD Vance becoming president. I'm not. And I've been talking about how he's going to be giving the marching orders by the party to fix things. That's step one, or that's part one. Part two of why I'm not worried is that the Republican Party doesn't like JD Vance. We've talked about it. He doesn't have the hold over the Republicans like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has this stranglehold over the Republican Party where he can pretty much say or do whatever he wants. And they, for the most part, find ways to excuse it. They go along with it, they ignore it, what have you. And I think in part they're just waiting for Donald Trump to croak. So JD Vance isn't going to have the same stranglehold, and he's not going to have the same hold over that 30-ish% of the Republican voters that are diehard MAGA. Now, JD Vance could keep MAGA voting for him if Donald Trump kicks the bucket, and maybe he could keep MAGA voting for him if it's because of something in the Epstein files that they removed Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump wants us to believe that he's completely exonerated by the Epstein files, by what's been released, and that's not the case. He's mentioned numerous times with all kinds of things being in there about things that have happened. They had what were called calendar girl parties, which I'm not 100% sure what that actually was. Like if it was for girls that were hot enough to be on a calendar or what. I don't know what the entirety of that was. I was never part of any of that stuff, so I'm not sure. But there's other talk about how Donald Trump had employees at Mar-a-Lago who were giving massages. There's talk about how, him being in with Epstein and all sorts of stuff. There's thousands of documents that connect Epstein and Trump. And if the Republicans remove Donald Trump because of his connections to Epstein and they use that as their, reason, they could save that 30% of the MAGA base. And when they do, they could vote for JD, but JD's not well liked with the MAGA base. They only like JD Vance right now because he was picked by Donald Trump. Obviously, for at least a section of that Republican MAGA base, they don't like the fact that JD Vance is married to Usha Vance, who is an immigrant, or she's either an immigrant or the child of an immigrant, one of the two. But they don't like that. There is a big section of the MAGA base that can't stand it. JD is going to have an uphill battle within his own party to get reelected. I'm not worried about what happens after 28. I think Democrats win regardless. And that they move forward. Now, an Arizona state senator, I'm going to switch gears here for a little bit. Arizona state senator, I think, or was it a member of their House of Representatives? One of the two, introduced a bill in the Arizona legislature that would petition Congress to repeal the 17th Amendment. Now, the 17th is not one you hear about very often. In fact, you don't think about it at all. Now, you don't really hear about the 17th Amendment at all. But what is the 17th Amendment? Well, The 17th Amendment is the direct election of the U.S. senators. They want to repeal that and go back to the old way of doing things. Now, we haven't done that in over 100 years. But why do they want to go back to direct or to get rid of direct election of state or of senators for each state? Well, simple. The old system was that your state legislature would appoint the senator for your state. Okay, so for example, we've been talking about states that could flip in this upcoming midterm election. I bring up Iowa all the time about Iowa could potentially get a Democratic senator. We haven't had a Democratic senator in a long time. Now, right now, we have near supermajorities in the state legislature for the Republicans in both chambers. Not quite, but near. And if they were to be successful at repealing the 17th Amendment, that would mean the state legislature could get to appoint somebody. Guess what? They would pick a Republican, period. There wouldn't be an election. There wouldn't be a chance for the Democrats to gain a foothold. And this is just another attempt by the Republicans to cheat to win. They're looking at the map and they're looking at things and they're looking at trends and going, oh, fuck, we can't win. So we got to change the rules. And that's effectively what they're doing. They want to try to change the rules and say we are going to appoint senators again like we used to. We never should have changed it. Now, is this going to pass? No. I don't believe this passes at all. Multiple reasons. One, you need 2/3 of both chambers of Congress. And I don't think they get there. They do not have enough votes in Congress, even if they were to take it up. And two, this is a state-led initiative trying to ask the Congress to do this, right? That means Arizona is just saying, hey, I want you guys to try this. That doesn't mean it even gets brought up at all in either chamber. So there's no guarantee, even if it passes Arizona, that this holds any weight. And even if on the off chance that it were to pass the House and the Senate, they still need 38 states to end up ratifying it and passing it. And the Republicans do not control 38 states. They don't have majorities big enough in 38 state legislatures in order to ratify that amendment. That's the same reason why Donald Trump would not be able to run for a third term should he live long enough. And I still don't think he will. We've talked about that. Why? They don't have the votes. For everybody saying, well, they should do this or they should do that, they don't have the votes. Now, there are things that need changed with our Constitution that would take a constitutional amendment. Age limits potentially, and maybe even some kind of term limit for Congress. However, if they're doing a good job, maybe it's not the worst that they get reelected, but definitely age limits. We don't need these old people continuing to vote for things and making the rules when they have way fewer years left than they have behind them. And the example I always point to is our senator here, Chuck Grassley, who is 92 years old and wants to run again for reelection in 2028 at 94. If he runs for reelection, wins, and lives to the end of that term, he will be over 100 years old, or right around 100. Right, he'll be 100, maybe a little over, which is ridiculous. We should not have people who are 100 years old in the U.S. Senate. And I keep talking about Grassley. He has been in the Senate longer than I have been alive. It's time for somebody new. And considering, I think senator, you have to be, I think it's 30. If you cap the age even at 65 or 70, you could still get a 40-year career. That is the length of a lot of people's professional careers after they get out of high school. Maybe they bounce from job to job until they get that job they want with their degree. They spend 40 years doing it. they're retired, you know, and they're retiring at 65 or 70. They don't want to go to, most people don't want to be working till they're 100. I know if I'm still working at 100, hell, if I'm still here at 100, I'd better be at a home. I'd better be, enjoying my retirement. I don't want to be working. And I really wouldn't want a stressful job of trying to run this country at 100 years old. We need to do something like that. The problem is, much like repealing the direct election of senators vote at this point, um, the people that would be required to pass it are the ones that are elected. They're that, like, we vote them in, they're the ones that would change the rules, but they have to vote to change the rules against themselves, and they're not going to do that. So I don't. Yeah, you're probably going to hear a little more about this, about the direct election of senators off and on. Apparently, a few Republicans have been pushing it lately. It's them trying to change the rules and change the game so that they can have more seats in Congress. They're scared of losing the Senate. They're scared of losing the House, and I think what'll happen is come 2026, if they get the House and the Senate, and come 28, if they can keep them both with getting a Democratic president, you are going to see a younger person in, probably somebody who is a millennial in, and you're going to see a shift to the left. You are going to see a shift toward, very liberal ideologies, and eventually it will shift back toward center. Um, but you're going to see some things go through, maybe universal health care, maybe some other things that will benefit a lot of people. And I was watching a podcast the other day, one you guys are familiar with, the Rational Boomer podcast, and his guest on the other day was somebody else you guys are probably very familiar with. That is Tom Powell Jr. And Tom Powell Jr. talked about how the Gen Z kids and the younger millennials had more of a learning experience that was focused on a lot of group projects. And the idea being that if you work together as groups, you can bring everybody up. And about how everybody putting in a little bit of effort makes it better for the whole. And when these younger kids, uh, and I say kids for anybody younger than me, when the younger people start getting involved in politics, and those people with that ideology actually make it to Congress, you are going to see a drastic change. I agree with exactly what Tom Powell said on today's Rational Boomer podcast, that when those kids and young people finally get into Congress and they start passing laws, et cetera, you are going to see laws that reflect that ideology, that it's not everybody for themselves. It's let's work together and make it better for everybody. And you're going to see a lot of that. Now, some would call that socialism. I call it improvement. When they talk about socialism, they don't realize, the people on the right, that we have tons of things that are already socialized. You get into a car accident, you call the police department, right? They show up, they take everybody's information, they assign a ticket, maybe you need an ambulance. And yes, I know medical services and EMTs are privately paid, but the staffing around dispatching them are publicly funded. And like, you don't pay for 911 operator to dispatch an ambulance if you need it because of a car accident at the time, right? That side of it is socialized. Maybe there's a house fire and fire truck gets sent out. They come up, they put out the fire. They never charge you a dime unless they prove you intentionally set it. And I've seen cases, and I know of cases where um, that has been talked about. I had a former coworker had a farmhouse they were going to get rid of on their property. They said, "Okay, we'll just burn it. We built a new house." And the fire department said, "Hey, that's fine. You can do that. But if you lose control and we have to come put it out, you're going to get the bill for us putting out the fire. Instead, why don't you donate the house to us, or donate the burning of the house to us? We'll show up, we'll put it out, and we'll use it as training." They did, and it cost the coworker of mine nothing at the time. But if they had to, come put it out because he lost control, they would charge. But that's still socialized, right? The taxpayers paid for it. Our tax money went to it. And when you start talking about universal health care, um, it can only save us money in the long run. Our health insurance costs and everything are far greater than what it would cost us overall to in taxes to just have it come out of our taxes, right? We could fix it, but I don't think it gets solved until we get younger people in Congress and younger people in politics in general. And as we go forward, that is going to be the biggest change. We need to start getting these older people out, getting younger people in, and that's going to happen on its own in some cases as some of these older people are retiring. The problem is, as I was talking about, younger people are being taught more and more about group projects and stuff. And that idea of let's all work together directly contradicts conservative ideology. Conservative ideology, a lot of times, is I'm out for me and me alone. I got mine, screw you guys. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Don't wait for the government to fix it for you. Well, sure, that sounds great on paper. Here's the problem. When you are busy doing that, if everybody worked together, maybe everybody could be better. We need to fix a lot of problems in this country. And it starts with the midterms. It starts with the Democrats regaining control. But the Democrats aren't the only solution here. I think at some point we just have to get better ideas, younger ideas, fresh ideas into Congress. And that can only be achieved through voting in different people. Now, I've been talking about the midterms and this idea that, Democrats are going to take control. Well, that's true. We can vote our way out of this. The protests are helping. We are standing up. We are showing uh, more and more things. And people like myself and other podcasters and other creators on social media with bigger followings than me, showcasing all of the things that are going on is raising awareness. And that is helping get people active in voting and going, oh my God, what the fuck is this and this and this and this? Okay. I mean, I talk about it all the time. I've got a coworker who says prior to like 2 years ago wasn't very political. And now is looking around going, fucking hell, I thought he was just some, a reality TV show. I thought he was just a clown and kind of, a businessman. What the fuck did we all vote for? And is now actually paying attention. And we have weekly discussions about what is going on. That is going to be one of the ways we get through it. But we have to get to the midterms. We have to vote the Democrats in. But then once the Democrats are in power, we also have to hold them accountable for doing things to help the American people. Now, I've been talking about primary season. Primary season is upon us. This is the last thing I'm going to touch on real quickly. Right now is the time to push your preferred candidate. For example, here in Iowa, I think Rob Sand has got the best chance of becoming the next governor if he gets the Democratic nomination. Now, there are some other Democrats running, and they may all be good, but I think Rob Sand gives us the best chance to be governor. And come the primary, which I believe is in June, I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote for Rob Sand. 100%. If Rob Sand is not the Democratic nominee for governor, I'm still going to vote for the Democrat. I'm not going to throw a fit. I'm not going to show up and vote for the Republican. I'm not going to withhold my vote and try to show the Democrats a lesson. And that's the problem we have with certain voters in this country. They've done it several times. They didn't like how things happened with Bernie in 2016. So they protest voted. And they voted for, some of them didn't even vote at all. And some purposefully went and said, screw Hillary Clinton. I'm going to show the Democrats I'm voting for Trump. And then comes 2024. And whether the people on the Democratic side like it or not, there was a Democratic primary. They like to say there was no primary, but there was. The winner of the Democratic primary was Joe Biden with like 95% of the vote because he was the incumbent. And He ran against RFK Jr. for a little while till RFK dropped out, and Marianne Williamson, who got like 2% of the vote. It wasn't close, okay? There was a primary. When Joe Biden stepped aside, the logical replacement was the other half of his ticket, which was Kamala Harris. But there were people that were pissed off that they didn't see that primary process, or they didn't believe the primary because Kamala's name wasn't in there. Because why would she? She was going to be running as Joe Biden's VP candidate. She wasn't trying to replace him at top of the ticket during that primary. But people got all mad. Well, there wasn't a primary to this, and they withheld their vote again. We can't do that in the midterms this time around. We can't do that in 2028. You push during the primary to get your preferred candidate across that finish line. If you campaign, you do yard signs, you do events, you do whatever. Even if it's just sharing their message out on social media, you push to get your preferred candidate in the primary. And win or lose, you should, if you truly believe in. Now, there's going to be some Democrats that maybe you don't need to do this for, but I'm talking about 95% of the Democratic nominees, because we have seen some Democrats that win that are nothing but MAGA in disguise. But unless you see that they are one of them and you can prove it, you vote for the Democrat, because first thing we have to do is get some checks and balances against this administration so we can work toward making progress and work toward making things better. All right, that is going to do it for the Analytical Iowan podcast for today. I hope you have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow because there's going to be even more to talk about.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.